first year of that war, there were no conscriptions. Every soldier that went was a volunteer. And it was amazing the number of young men who began to volunteer to go. But they had these sessions going to join, you see. And I mean, in some families there was 3, 4 and 5 brothers all go together. Lord Kitchener, he was one who was very important in those days, and everybody liked him. It was set up in all the villages and all the towns where the men could go and recruitment drives they called it, and this was Kitchener's recruitment drive. And all these men flocked to sign on. And I can remember boys who lived by us, you know, you'd be waving, they'd be going to sign on, and then they were all off to the war. One of the boys who lived on the other side of the road came up the road all dressed up in his guard's uniform with his busby, and we children gathered all round. We thought it was wonderful. He was a great tall chap. My father didn't have to go. Of course, he was 39 when the war started, and I think the conscription age was 40 the next year. Well, my father was 40 the next year, and he had his calling up papers, but as he worked for a food factory, he didn't have to go. Cadbury signed to keep him, said he was necessary there in the factory, and he didn't have to go.
Were you involved as civilians in the war? Did you have any bombing of any kind?
Well, of course, we used to watch the searchlights in the sky every night. The searchlights would be about. And, of course, it was dark outside. We weren't allowed to go out as children after tea because of the blackout. You can't imagine really what it was like without it. And it was all right when there was a moon. But when there was no moon and there were no lamplights, no light showing from any of the houses, everywhere was dark. So we weren't allowed to go out in the evenings. But one night, the war had been on for some time. My brother and mother came upstairs and woke us. We'd gone to bed. Of course, we used to go to bed round about 7, 7:30. And we were in bed asleep. And they came and woke us, and there was guns firing. They'd got a gun at the fire station in King's Heath, and that used to fire occasionally. As soon as that started firing, my brother and my mother got rather anxious, so they decided to get us up.
Because your father was on nights, wasn't he?
That's right. My father wasn't there, you see. So the other 3 children who were already in bed asleep, they woke us and brought us downstairs. And my mother said, the Zeps must be about with the guns going off like this. And we'd got a pantry. It was a dark pantry that went underneath the stairs. And she made us all go in there and sit down on the floor and shut the pantry door. So we were all shut inside the dark pantry. And we were in there for some time. And then the firing stopped. And I can remember my mother bringing us out into the sitting room, and she'd already put coal on the fire so as to make it a bit warm in the sitting room. And then someone knocked the door, and it was a next door neighbour, and she'd come to see if we were all right. And my mother said, yes, come in, I'm just about to make a cup of tea. So Mother made a cup of tea, and I can remember Mrs. Walthouse sitting there and having a cup of tea with us and us children. Oh, we thought it was absolutely marvellous to be up in the middle of the night. Most unusual, really, to be awake and up in the middle of the night.
Did bombing happen often?
No, No, I only remember that once. There could have been more, but I only remember the once when we all went in the dark pantry. And my brother, Ted, he was always tired, and we hadn't been in the sitting room a few minutes after being brought out of the dark pantry when he was lying asleep on the rug in front of the fire. But eventually we all went back to bed. But I don't ever remember. There could have been more, but I don't remember.
One of the big problems for civilians in the 14-18 war was the shortage of food, which became acute about 1917 as the submarine warfare was very successful.
Yes.
Can you remember being short of food?
Well, we only had the rations. I can't remember the rations that we had in the First World War. I can remember in the Second World War, of course, but I can't remember the First. But I know we had to be very careful. But we used a lot of dripping. My mother used to have a lot of fatty meat, and you could buy fat, and she'd render it down so that we'd always got plenty of... we could always have toasted bread, you see, in the fat. And we'd like the bread toasted in the fat and then spread with a little bit of bovril on the top.
What was rationed? Was bread rationed?
No, not in the First World War. And only a short time in the Second World War. In fact, I'm not quite sure if it wasn't just after the war.
It was just after the war.
Yes.
You had bread units, BUs they were called.
Yes, that's right. But in the First World War, we seemed to have plenty of bread and plenty of milk. The milk wasn't rationed at all. Mind you, I think the milk came from local farms. It wasn't, in those days, it didn't have to go away in a great big...
So the ration was meat?
Yes, there was meat, sugar, tea, and the fats, of course, butter and margarine. But I don't remember anything else. The clothing wasn't rationed. We had clothes, and there didn't seem to be the shortages somehow in the First World War that there was in the Second. I mean, in the Second World War we were short of paper and everything else.
There's a silver lining through the dark cloud shining. Turn the dark cloud inside out till the morning.